How it be, Hums? It's your boy Lil Blue from Soviet Elmo, and today we are back at it with another world building video. So the last time we left off, we were doing this map here, Elogia, circa 4580 AC. And yeah guys, so I've done a whole lot of work since the last video, so let's get straight into it. The Living Moon. It's a cold night in northwestern Vuollen. You crawl out of your tent to pee. You look up at the sky and see a blue and green marble, hanging so effortlessly in the air. You wonder if it's some long-forgotten ancient god dwells there, or if it's a god itself. The wolves howl at it, as you hear their echoing calls, and you too wish to sing praises. Gautama is about the size of the Earth's moon, with a rich nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere and a vast liquid water sea. By all means of logic, this moon should not be habitable. Its gravity is too weak for its atmosphere, and it should be tidally locked to Vuollen. From vast scorching deserts to beautiful forest of conifers, Gautama has it all. Strangely, it has the same flora and fauna as Vuollen, although adapted to the low gravity. The whole world feels like it was constructed. Atsama. The northmost island of the Gazarene archipelago, Atsama, sits as a land of mystery. Kairouan traders had explored the western coast with the peoples, trading with the peoples there, but other than that, there was little contact with the outside world. The Shudi culture live as subsistence farmers in the fertile southern lowlands, but have no form of government. Mysteriously, there's a large pyramid in the Paishui Desert. Some believe it to be evidence of a pre-Big Smite civilization, as Atsama has some of the most fertile land on Vuollen. The Kairouans were originally from Atsama, and around the year 4450 AC, the Kairouans migrated across the sea for an unknown reason. Cuisine of Kairou. Whether you're a chef in Lord Saito's court or a tough sailor on the high waters of the Great Sea, these are the staples of a Kairouan diet. Fish. Fish is eaten all over Kairou, as they have a strong naval tradition. Water buffalo. From north to south you'll find them, used as labor, food, and transportation. Milk, kumis, and the finest parmesan. Melons, mainly eaten in the warm and wet south. Cranberry, primarily a southern delicacy. Wheat and its products are mainly eaten in the fertile Mediterranean north. Water chestnuts, grown in the vast swamps of the south. Alligator. When the monstrous beast is killed, you mustn't let it go to waste. Chicken, cheap and good. Eggs are also common. Rice, mainly southern. The giant in the south. Deep in the southern continent lay a race of giant men. Towering 25 feet tall, they roam the vast frontier. Giants can live up to 900 years, and it is said that they remember creation itself. They call themselves the Rigor and live on family homesteads. However, some are rogues, traveling far and living off the land. They communicate through song. Across the dream you can hear their echoing voices for miles, as the giant's serenade swells the land. The Rigor population is low, as they require a tremendous amount of food, and take 3 years to gestate their young. A giant's meal is a banquet, entire sheep eaten like lamb chops, and an eden of plants for a salad. A Rigor builds his home by pulling down the trees to create a canopy, and uses mammoth skin for a fabric. Agnakria. Within the jungles of Agnakria, Lake Piroga sits at its core. The heart of the Pirogan people, the lake provides them with clean water and fish, and towering out of the lake, Aljaro, god of life, provides them with immense healing powers. Nobody knows where Aljaro came from. The giant tree, towering 1,000 feet high, grows a mold, and from that mold, the natives of the region extract penicillin. Cities dot the coastline, as the jungle interior is wild and dangerous. Vast fields of rice paddies and fruit farms feed the Pirogan people. They believe that all life is sacred, and that we are one with nature, although wild boar is an illegal delicacy. Local chiefs pass down leadership to the eldest son, but the real power comes from the priesthood who live on Aljaro. But the land of life is not all peaceful, as demons live in the bush, coming from the night to kill and steal. The Kingdom of Vizong. The Kingdom of Vizong formed around the Vizong River. a patchwork of princely states and other smaller entities constantly skirmishing in small wars and kerfuffles. Although they are de jure part of the Perugian theocracy, they are in reality their own thing, as the priests of Aljaro cannot spread their dominions so far away. The kingdom of Izong was united by the great warrior King Vagra I during the 4420s. However, the title King of Izong has become merely a formality. The king is just an overseer of the Vizonger Council, as the leaders of the land come to vote on greater issues. In the deep rainforest, the reapers roam the land, firing blow darts from their panther mounts. These dead men are covered in paints and tattoos from head to toe, and it is said that they consume human flesh and wear bone armor. The Vizong fear these savage men, and rally civilian militias to fight them off. However, their tale is one of tragedy. These young men, often boys, have dishonored their families, and have been cast from society, finding new camaraderie as reapers. The Visitor. Kurium Taile was a Taizé trader in the post-Tungli world. He had traveled far and wide, bringing wealth and goods back to his family. But he had also brought back something awful from the Tungli-occupied Aloja, horse plague. He and many other traders had brought it back to Kairu, and the disease spread like wildfire in the 4610s. His wife, Wiloko, fell ill, and he knew not what to do. One of his close friends told him of a land in the far south where they can cure any sickness, and without hesitation he set sail, bringing his family with him. It was a harsh voyage, as Waro spared no mercy. By all means of logic, they would not have landed in Vizong, but on the northern tip of Agnakria, where no recorded civilization lived. But miraculously, they landed safely on the shores of Vizong. They were greeted equally with kindness and distrust. Over time, his wife healed, and they lived in Vizong for 12 years. He wrote about his time in Agnakria, and that is how we know so much about it. After hearing about Aljaro, he made a trip upriver. It was the most beautiful thing I had seen in all my years of traveling. A mountain of wood and green. Kurium Taile, 4619. The Saitos in exile. As Farakum's mercenaries stormed the capital, Lord Saito fled the island. After 80 years of rule and the kingdom of Kairu had collapsed. He and the loyalists left their homeland for good, and they would never see it again. They landed in Skalkria, a cold and mountainous peninsula isolated from the rest of the world. They created a new nation with Lord Saito as its core, gradually pushing west. But after hearing of the chaos caused by the horse plague, Lord Saito prepared a homecoming. Technology would be on their side, as the horse and bronze had not gripped Kairu as it did to Skalkria, and the plague had already hit them years prior. There would be two landing grounds, the northern tip of Rime and the western coast of Sokoham. Going on launch ships, the voyage would take 4 days, and prayer to Waro would be vital. The air smelt like fish, and a deep fog surrounded the motherland. As a boy, my elders told me stories of their forefathers in Kairu, and of the glory of our empire. They said that Lord Saito held dominion from Ngaburu to Atsama, and had a legion of 500,000 men. When we finally landed, I fell to the ground of my ancestors. I picked up the sands of the beach in my hands and praised Lord Saito. We roamed around, taking villages and towns without bloodshed, but when we reached Kirita, a fight was upon us. The homelanders fought with stone spears and wooden armor, and swiftly fell beneath our rank and file of bronze blades. Our cavalry quickly subdued the north, but the south remains a thorn in our side to this day. Our rank and file of... After 180 years of torment, the Taizé were but history, and no man, woman, or even children survived the slaughter. I'm no libertarian, my son, but what we did to the Taizé was the most dishonorable thing I've ever seen. Sahem Kirita, 4623. And then that's a map of post-homecoming Kairu. A fractured culture. After 106 years, the Saitos returned to their homeland as foreigners. Their languages diverged and their cuisine had been changed. Skalks, Skalkrians, and Kais, homelanders, were even different in appearance, with Skalks having pale skin and blonde hair, most likely from the natives. They even took upon different gods. Without the impressive rule of Lord Saito, he lost status of deity amongst the people, and as Skalkria is mostly void of large storms and hurricanes, Waro was all but forgotten. The different climate in Skalkria replaced watermelon with potatoes and buffalo with sheep. There was a great friction in the empire, as the south still hadn't been conquered. The north wasn't happy with occupation, and Skalkria felt like Lord Saito was spending too much time with the new child, so to speak. The debate to move the capital was even more jarring, as the commodores could care less about the homeland. Power in the empire functioned differently in different places, with Skalkria being an organized confederation of landlords all pledging allegiance to Lord Saito, and Kairu being a famine-riddled war zone. After a potato blight ravaged Skalkria in 4635, the unthinkable happened, a military coup. Led by Sahem Kirita, the Legion of Saito marched upon the marble capital with demands to give power to the military, in order to restabilize the empire. With very few soldiers loyal to him, Lord Saito gave in. The military didn't want to remove him, as, even as a figurehead, a centralized leader was vital for maintaining loyalty. The new power structure worked as a military oligarchy, with high-ranking officers deciding law and policy via elections. Soon after the coup, the Rime Spring occurred, leading the young oligarchy into a bloody 4-year-long guerrilla campaign. The worst part was it was during the Year of Darkness. For 1 month, a total lunar eclipse covered all of Allosia. The Year of Gautama. The Gautamist clergy saw the lunar eclipse as an omen to all followers of Gautama to rise up against their Tungli Roganist oppressors. This caused almost 10 years of constant warfare and destabilization in Allosia. The eclipse had also caused many crops to fail, leading to a famine, as without sunlight they withered. Seeing this as an opportunity, the Sakte and Makwe began raiding deep into Allosia, just as their forefathers did 70 years prior. Coming home with an olive crust of victory in the Rime Spring, Sahem Kirita was given the title of Great General, and was a beloved folk hero even by the Kais. He showed honor and warrior spirit to his enemies, and treated conquered peoples with respect. He would spend the cold Skalkrian winters away in the courts of Gomaha, and in 4641 he conquered Ngaburu, and gave autonomy to the Ngab rulers in the west. He incorporated coastal Elosian cities by promising protection from Maria and by promising protection from the Tunglian revolutionaries, and married the Princess of Maria in 4647, uniting their two kingdoms. However, he was a rampant drunk, and in 4662 he died of alcohol poisoning at a victory party during his conquest of Lower Elosia. Without his leadership, the conquest failed, and they were driven back to the walls of Gomaha. His 13-year-old son left to rule an empire, and quickly became a puppet of Lord Saito. Tungli empires. Across the continent, Tungli Allfathers spread their influence upon the smaller farming nations. When the Tungli invaded Valosia 100 years ago, they colonized vast swaths of land, and the some Tungli began to settle on rivers and fertile grounds, creating their own societies. These small kingdoms were very similar to one another, only farming different crops in different climates and wearing different clothes. To be honest, your standard of living greatly diminished as a farmer, slaving away for a fat, happy king when you could be a horseman, fighting in epic battles on the steppe for your glorious Allfather. Due to this, many young men would run off to the steppe, causing a majority female population in these regions. Women would build the houses, farm the crops, smith the tools, and even became kings. This caused a matriarchal society, where a man's only role was as a warrior for their queen. Kings on high. Click, clack, the clank of industry. You work at a bread factory, but this is not 7080. This is 4650 AC. A large network of hydropower dams use the forests of the many rivers and waterfalls of Taikasia to fuel its industry. No one knows how the dams were built or who built them, but when these high mountains were settled by the Taikasians, their civilization flourished. They quickly figured out how to use water power to create a plethora of machinery, and from that machinery to create a plethora of goods and luxuries. The Taikasians soon realized that their ever-growing population would starve just feeding off of sheep herds and berry bushes, so they came up with a plan. Use the dams to block water from running downstream, and thus starving the farming people of the lowlands. Eventually, the lowlanders would have to make an arrangement to pay a food tribute to the Taikasians in exchange for their water supply. The plan worked, and over time the lowlanders began to worship the Taikasians as gods. The Taikasian government built a series of bicycle trails through the mountains, which were strategically placed to always face downhill, allowing for fast travel across the realm. Taikasian society. The Taikasians had the highest standard of living in the world. The average Caucasian had a roof over his head and food on his plate, with a bike to traverse the land. Warm, comfortable clothing manufactured in the halls of the great dams. The nation was a democracy, with every man of suitable age eligible to vote. Each province would hold an election once a year for governor, and the governors would gather together to announce the emperor. Governors would have total control over their provinces, but would have to listen to the emperor if he disagreed. The emperor was in charge of keeping the peace between the provinces, as well as the armed forces, mainly used for maintaining the lowlands. However, when their industrial revolution began, the old gods died out. The concepts of natural spirits withered away in the factories, and the people needed new meaning. A scholar by the name Vlastegel Kolmak came up with a new ideology, a society without class or emperor. Sahib Kirita II. Sahib Kirita II, born of Princess Maria VI and Sahim Taro Kirita, led an empire from age 13. What his father had built he would neglect, and the empire would crumble. As his father was most often on campaign, and his mother ruling her side of the empire, he was practically an orphan, and was pretty much raised by Lord Saito. He was a brilliant combatant, and an even smarter tactician. Sahim was also considered the most handsome man on Vuollen, and courted every young royal in Valoja, too distracted with wine and women to become a leader. While he was constantly fighting Kairu to fulfill their national dream of homecoming, Lord Saito ran the show. The short-lived Kirita dynasty never officially ruled the empire, as the nation was a military oligarchy figureheaded by an honorary monarch, similar to the Second Reich in Germany. Prophet of the Sun. Iloja had been bullied by foreigners for 100 years. Kairouan kings taking their sacred grounds and Tungle All-Fathers raiding their homes. Enough was enough, said Asbam Rakov, a self-proclaimed prophet of Rogan. It was told in legend that one day Asbam was walking by a fire pit on the summer solstice and fell in. But instead of being burned, he was taken to the sun to meet with Rogan. He said, Asbam, my child, you will lead your people to victory against they who do not worship me and my bride Gautama, for the war is no longer between Gautamists and Roganists, but between Iloja, my chosen people, and the savages of Vuollen. Rogan's glory grew greater, and then he bestowed an angel upon Asbam. Take this dragon, and with it you shall unite my people. After that, Asbam Rakov roamed the countryside, with his mount, proclaiming what he had heard. Roganism had long been a dying faith, only popular among the Tungali elite. However, the Ilosian people would take any charismatic leader over the endless Gautamist guerrilla warfare and bi-decimal Tungali raids. While not in living memory, many families had lost land and riches to the Tungali minority, with hatred and racism towards them growing day by day. Asbam gained a large following in the 4660s. It was so large that the Tungali kings couldn't arrest him, due to fear of revolt. In 4671, Neo-Roganist revolutionaries seized power over Menon, with the king fleeing to the Kairouan Empire. With Asbam finally on the throne of a nation, he sent out armies and generals to conquer, quickly seizing coastal cities from Kairu and the tip of Menon from Maria. This caused executive action from the Kairouan Senate to depose Lord Saito for poor leadership. However, before they could arrest him, he fled to the home isles, dying at sea. The Saito dynasty had ended. Ashes of the Empire. After the death of Lord Saito, local Kairouan warlords and generals seized power, and Sahim Kirita II only remained in Kairu. Sahim was a prideful, arrogant boy who only knew party and battle, not fit to lead a nation. Asbam Rakov grew more and more powerful, beating king after king, with no great power to stop him. Rakov was a military genius. He used phalanx tactics to beat the Tungali cavalry. However, after driving deep into Ukuhan, he suffered a huge defeat at Tavriden by the Makwe General Hecht, forcing them back to Menon and its surrounding lands. Not even the fire of the mighty dragon could tear down the walls of Gomaha, and the city remained sovereign. The tale of the walls of Gomaha was turned into a play by the great poet Escaretaro. To this day, it's still told in Ilosian legend. Well, that's going to be it for today, folks. Have a good day. Auf Wiedersehen.